I am a little worried that, say you're going to like Brazilian steakhouse and everything's grilled electrically. Does it taste the same?
You sending back that chicken or steak if it doesn't come back exactly medium rare?
I don't personally like sending my food back at restaurants because I just get nervous that someone's going to do something to them. I don't want to leave with anything other than a full stomach. So, welcome back to another episode of the Fifth Wall Future World Vodcast. You've got Christian and Cedric here. Good morning, Cedric.
We're back, baby. It's Thursday, over the hump day. What are we talking about?
The weekend couldn't come any sooner. We are going to discuss two articles, actually. One that was resurfaced on a wind farm project that was actually being dismantled in Germany to expand a coal mining facility. The next article, a recent development with the natural gas ban passing in New York.
Sweet. We got some hot takes at the end, so be sure to stay for the entire episode.
Yeah, and leave us some comments. We want to hear your opinions, and we want to get pressed on our opinions too and have some, spicy conversations. The hot takes only get hotter when we've got some good commentary from the crowd. So first off, full disclosure, I love Germany. I love German cars.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
I don't sprechen Sie Deutsch, but I do know how to say thank you and you're welcome in German. And I also love their food. And maybe it's the Korean side of me that likes like pickled things. But sauerkraut, man.
Sauerkraut. I'm a big bratwurst guy.
Yeah, bratwurst with some good sauerkraut on it. Whew.
Can't get better than that.
Can't get better than that.
But what are the Germans doing wrong right now?
Yeah, okay. So a few things here. For whatever reason, this was resurfaced this week, is there was a wind farm in Germany, and they actually started dismantling the wind farm in order to expand the mining capacity or the mining area of a coal mine. So essentially ripping down renewables to put in, more coal capacity essentially on the grid, which seems very counterintuitive for any country that has aggressive net zero goals.
Right. Germany is one of the more progressive state in the bloc, right? I guess has this always been a part of the plan? Is it in response to, the recent energy crisis from the Russia-Ukraine war?
Yeah, no, you know what? I think this really comes down to a few things. So obviously, one, let's give credit where credit's due. Germany has been putting a ton of renewables online. They removed all this capacity from their nuclear reactors, and they're like approaching the ability to match that capacity with like solar and battery essentially, and wind. Let's give them credit there. They are very much at the forefront of this renewable energy transition. That being said, they've got a big issue here with all the capacity with like what I just mentioned here of taking their nuclear plants off. What essentially that does is nuclear has, a 92% capacity factor, which means it's running 92% of the time. Solar, for example, we just pick on solar, right? Only have, I'm forgetting the capacity factor on solar, but it's, you only have like 8 hours of the day max that you're really able to generate like solid amount of solar power from. And then during night, you're not generating any power. So you have a much lower capacity factor. And so as you put on renewables with low capacity factors like wind and solar, then you need to back that up with baseload power. They decided to go against nuclear, which is, in my opinion, just completely idiotic on the side of the German government. And then they're going to replace that, it looks like, at least transitionally, with coal. So they'll run coal plants, bump up their coal production, even to the point where they will, take down renewables, right, to expand that capacity because they need that baseload power. Like, what are you going to run everything that uses electricity off of in the middle of the night? So yeah, those are and then obviously there's the crisis with Ukraine. And so there's like a little bit of a natural gas crisis there as well, or constraint on natural gas. And so all of that coming together is putting big limitations on at least the optics of their renewable energy transition.
Right. To play devil's advocate, though, the wind turbines have been operational since 2001, and so that's, call it, 22 years, right? These turbines are coming to the end of their life. What's crazy to me is that this doesn't seem like a low effort, low lift project. Like they're literally displacing a German town to expand this mine, which seems like a huge endeavor.
Yeah, and I think as long as they're playing the long game, I'm happy to give them the benefit of the doubt on this decision. I know that there is a large, coal contingency in Germany, just like in the United States, we have a similar dynamic where I think, 50 to 60% of our electricity comes from coal, and we have whole parts of the country, kind of like the Appalachians, right, and the eastern part of the United States, that there's a lot of coal miners that live out there. Economies were built around that. And as we transition out, there is friction there, especially political friction. I think that's kind of my hot take here too. If we are really going to push forward through to a renewable energy future, right? Like, yes, they're making a decision of like, hey, long-term, you were going full renewable, but short-term, we're gonna have to burn coal. If that was just made out of, politics and to scratch some other person's back and to like maintain votes as a politician, that's stupid, because there was a completely useful resource already set up in all these nuclear plants, completely safe, right? Like there will be many more Germans that will die from coal or have, respiratory illnesses, and will actually put more radiation in the air through coal than nuclear ever would. And so, where nuclear isn't, a perfect energy source by any means and had its issues in the past, they could have just kept those on instead of expanding coal.
Yep, for sure. There was a Reuters article this past December. Renewable energy accounted for about 46% of German power consumption, which was up from 41% a year earlier. Do you think this move sets them back permanently on their, renewable targets?
Yeah, so I think Germany has the goal of being off of coal power by 2038. What's hard to me is that as you boost coal production, you put more money in these people's pockets. It's just going to be a harder letdown, right? Than have just like ripping the Band-Aid off now, if that makes sense. And so that's what I worry about. And then how much are the emissions going to increase in Germany through 2038 when there was a clear-cut answer of, completely clean, zero emission, base load, 92% capacity factor energy, like operational, and they just said, okay, we're stopping it. I just wonder how that actually plays out. I'm not a politician, so I don't know, but it seems a little bit shady to me on that side.
Yep, for sure. Well, hopefully this is all just, again, like a short-term pain for a long-term gain. But, let's have our fingers crossed. In other news, in more positive news, on our side of the pond, New York just passed pretty substantial legislation banning gas in all new building construction.
Well, quick question here, Cedric. Do you think that New York is kind of leading the charge here, or do you think this is just going to be unique to New York?
I think New York is leading the charge. I think we've been seeing movements around, a number of states. I think Massachusetts, kind of a lot of West Coast states, California, Washington, Oregon, either cities or municipalities move towards these gas bans and new builds. But again, like if you look at the existing stock of buildings versus new builds, then we'll see how much of a dent it can make. Obviously a step in the right direction, but it's, how big and how fast.
Totally. No, I'd agree with you there. And just to go a little bit further on the details of this article. So the new law is actually going to require all new residential and commercial buildings to be constructed without gas connections, with exemptions for certain types of buildings and systems. So there will be some exemptions. And we need to clarify too here that this isn't, something they're going back retroactively. And if you have gas in your building right now and you're living in New York and you love your, like Wolf or Sub-Zero range, gas range, they're not coming in and ripping that out and then you're just, screwed. It's for new builds. So all new development, all new projects. And the move is going to be obviously part of the state's efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and transition to a clean energy economy. The article notes that the gas bans, to Cedric's point, right, are gaining momentum in cities and states across the U.S. as concerns about climate change and air pollution drive a shift towards electrification and renewable energy. However, the gas industry and some politicians, here we go to politics again, have criticized the bans as costly and impractical and have pushed for continued use of gas as a bridge fuel to renewable energy. So A huge caveat here. If the methane emissions of gas are monitored correctly and limited, then yes, renewable gas is better than burning coal, right? And so we could use it as a transitional or bridge fuel as referenced in this article. But I do not get their argument about why this would necessarily be more expensive. I'm not a project developer, but when I think through this logically, if I built up a building and I was, putting utilities in, I know I'm going to have to run in water. We've got to have electricity. And then I would need gas in some cases, right? But if you eliminated gas and you don't have to build up that infrastructure, put the pipes in, run the pipes through your building, do all the safety checks for that as well that I'm sure require with running gas pipes through anything, that should actually maybe make the building a little bit cheaper, but maybe I'm overstepping my bounds here. Cedric, you tell me.
No, I mean, I think you're onto that track. But again, I don't want to speak out of turn. I have never developed a building or laid any electrical wire, so don't want to unpack too much there.
And then we talked a little bit about the Local Law 97 previously. We talked about Impulse Stoves, right? A portfolio company of ours that's providing new age induction stoves, like next gen induction stoves that are able to beat gas on performance and also help with this energy transition. When we initially went over Local Law 97, I thought that kind of included gas, but I think that, coming out obviously with a specific gas ban, there's actually some differences here between the two.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to think about it, this new gas ban is related entirely to new builds, whether it's residential or commercial, whereas Local Law 97, think of them as just the operational emissions for existing building stock, heating, cooling, electricity use, construction, demolition, all for existing buildings. Some of our existing portcos can help with either ends of the spectrum, right? We have Runwise who can help more efficiently, gas boilers for water heating, water consumption, water leak monitoring. And so there they can help, reduce the operational emissions. But Christian, I know you're pretty close with a lot of our electrification plays. So kind of walk me through what you see as the building of the future.
Yeah, no, totally. And one thing I would just add to that before I jump into kind of the building of the future is, I don't know what the construction market looks like in New York. So I'm glad that, we are investing on the future and the past, right? Of like modernizing current buildings, because maybe the market for new builds doesn't even be that big. Like, who knows how big of an impact that this necessarily has? Because for right now, it feels like, at least in the commercial space, it's very expensive still to build these buildings. There's a lot of, regulatory complexity in getting new projects approved, especially in San Francisco. And then there's, low occupied rates of these buildings are super low, especially in San Francisco. I think New York's had a better, I know New York has had a better recovery than SF has, because I think the impact will maybe be bigger on like the Local Law 97 side than the gas ban side in terms of emissions. In terms of the building of the future, though, yeah, I don't think there's a building of the future that any of us are imagining or coming together in these roundtable events and speaking with government agencies, other investors, other strategics in the areas, and saying like the building of the future is going to revolve around natural gas or oil, right? It's all around electrification. Some of that, which is going to need to be solved, is one, just better appliances and better devices, such as what Impulse is doing, right? And so integrating in that sense is very attractive. And then two, that's going to need a lot of, controls. And so that brings in our investment in Span, which you also worked on, Cedric, and recently announced the closing of, which round was it again?
It was the B2. Shout out to Arch and the team.
The B2 round. Yeah. So great B2 closing. For what Span will allow people to do is have panel level control across all things that, are using electricity within their living space. So yeah, I think, on top of building materials, electric controls, it is expensive to do these things. So you're going to need, some mandates sometimes to push people in the right direction. And that's why we're trying to invest in the forefront of that.
Yep, for sure. The classic carrot and the stick debate. But one more portfolio company I think is super relevant here would be our next energy too, given that they just recently announced their Aries grid kind of battery storage solution. So again, to your point of electrification of buildings, all moving towards electrify everything in the future.
Yeah, I'd say to add to that, I would say better wiring systems, right? Are we going to see, superconductors make it into buildings? I want to see buildings actually become, truly like at the building level, not just the appliance level or the apartment level, but real DERs, right? Distributed energy resources. Like, could each building be a mini power plant? Maybe we even get to a world where, new windows work, right? Like next gen windows, more efficient there on the material side, maybe even are able to generate electricity from them, solar on the rooftops, better water management, circular systems, better waste management too, where we can really drive a ton of efficiency just out of the places where we live and work and spend most of our time. And that's really what we believe is going to make the biggest difference in this climate fight at the end of the day. Mic drop. Final comment, final hot take. I am a little worried that, say you're going to like Brazilian steakhouse and everything's grilled electrically. Does it taste the same?
We'll have to do some market research on that. We got to go to a steakhouse, I guess.
So yeah, this kind of goes back to our episode on, Chipotle going green, right? And it's the age-old question of not does the chicken come before the egg or the egg before the chicken, but does the chicken sizzle the same on electric versus gas versus charcoal versus wood pellets? And I'm worried that it's going to taste a little different. But if you want to hear what we talked about in that episode, click this link right here. Check that one out too for another fun conversation. But sounds like we need to go do some market research.
You sending back that chicken or steak if it doesn't come back exactly medium rare?
I don't personally like sending my food back at restaurants because I just get nervous that someone's going to do something to them. I don't want to leave with anything other than a full stomach. So, and so, yeah, I probably err on the side of just like,
yeah, what happens at Chipotle stays at Chipotle.
Yeah, exactly. And I think everyone's had one of those moments, but